Hey, everybody. Welcome to our first return trip episode. I got Kieran with me.
The return trip, Ryan. We've always, whenever you miss an attraction when you're traveling, Catherine, my wife, famously coined reason to go back, and I feel like the return trip is really the embodiment of the reason to go back.
Yeah, no, I think reason to go back. And the reason is we've got so many new listeners thanks to all the reviews and the ratings that we're getting. So thank you so much, folks, for listening. We have
Thank you.
Thank you so much. We have 126 other episodes besides this one. So we're going to be pulling out some gems from our earlier releases.
Gems? You're gonna call them gems?
Oh, they're definitely gems. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
You sparkle them up a little bit.
They sparkle already. These are uncut gems. So
So they're a little rough, but they sparkle. I like that.
yeah. So this first episode, this is was released October 31st, 2018. And
Spooky.
Yeah, I know.
Is
And
it a spooky episode?
It is definitely not a spooky episode. It was our fourth episode, and we talk about
so young.
We were
So young.
We didn't know what was in store for us in 2018.
Can you hear us taking the pacifiers out of our mouths?
We do sound a little shinier. I have to tell you, I'm like,
Yeah,
wow.
well, it was pre-pandemic.
Yeah.
I mean, everything was shinier then.
Yeah, we were definitely a little shinier. So if maybe folks will enjoy, they're like, wow, Ryan and Kieran used to really be happy guys. Yeah.
I don't think we ever had that reputation.
No. But it's a fun episode, because we both love historic homes, and we talk a bit about, what makes a great historic home and some of our 6 favorite historic homes that we visited. So it's a super relevant episode. All these houses are still it's still historic. They've only gotten older. So we look forward to sharing this one with you, and we hope you all enjoy it.
Sounds like it's time for a return trip.
Let's go. Hi, I'm Ryan Davis.
And I'm Kieran Schmidt.
And this is Out of Office, a travel podcast. Today, we are talking about American historic homes. But before we get to that, we're going to keep on with this quest to find a tagline. I know that Kieran has done some extensive planning and creative work, and is ready to present us with some winners.
Oh, I'm ready. Without a tagline, it still feels like that opening just doesn't have the oomph that we need. Plus, we got that website coming soon. And we're going to need a tagline on there. So when people just trip upon it, they immediately understand what Out of Office is about. So I've got 3 here.
Oh, 3. Because I came last week with over 1,000.
Yeah, but I actually came up with these 3, and all you did was steal other old, not related taglines and stuck the word travel into them.
I also struck Out of Office into some of them. You forget.
All right, ready?
Ready.
Okay. Out of Office, a travel podcast. Live to leave. Live to leave.
That's very morbid.
Yeah,
what does leave mean? Like leave what? Like leave everything behind? Or?
Yeah, leave everything behind. That's exactly what I'm saying. Just get up and leave everything behind. So it feels like you didn't think leave captured some of the joy.
No.
Leaving is like I'm getting out of here.
I'm getting out of here.
Yeah.
I've been on trips where it's like I can't wait to leave. Like when I went to Cardiff, and I'm like I got to get the hell out of here. But I don't think that's what you mean either.
Yeah. What did that maitre d' come back after you? That's for those loyal listeners. All right. Number 2, Out of Office, a travel podcast, an oral escape.
Oral.
A-U. A-U-R-A-L. So it has to do with, it's like a smell, olfactory, hearing, oral.
Right.
Oral.
I think that people are going to think
oral escape.
I think it sort of sounds like oral, which is a different kind of escape
so
entirely.
You think they're going to think it's a... Oh.
Yeah.
Ryan.
Yeah. So no, I think we're going to have to pass on that one.
But in writing, you like it in writing.
It's okay in writing, but it's a little. No, even in writing, I'm not super pumped about it.
Okay. Well, I still think it would make a great T-shirt. All right, and finally, This is it. I feel like this is the one. Out of Office, a travel podcast. Another stamp in the old pass pod.
Oh, wow.
Another stamp in the old pass pod. See, because I took passport, made it into pass pod because it's a podcast, so it's pass pod.
Pass pod that's not a thing. That doesn't make any sense.
No, but we make it a thing. It starts as not a thing, then we own it, and then but in a year we're known as the creators of the pass pod.
You should have brought up pass pod when we were naming the podcast. That's it's more.
I don't
pass pod travel podcast.
I don't know if that would have beat out Duffel. But no, I think pass pod's good. If you're not agreeing to it for the tagline, I do think we should come back to it for something else. Pass pod.
I think we should say today on the pass pod.
Today on the pass pod.
Yeah.
No, I don't know. It's better as pod.
Just pod?
I mean, what's adding another syllable accomplishing? You're just making it harder.
It's true.
All right. Well, which one's your favorite?
I live to leave this segment.
All right. Well, I guess we can get to the topic then. American historic houses. Let's tell the cabin crew.
Cabin crew, let's take off.
Flight attendants, prepare for takeoff, please.
All right. Historic homes where famous Americans lived. So what exactly is a historic house to you, Kieran?
I mean, I feel like it's a place where the famous person has to have lived for some significant amount of time. It can't just be George Washington slept here. I think it can't be some extraordinary, huge complex that, incorporated their offices and occasionally they slept in the back. I think it has to be a house.
How about a castle?
Do you have an example of a Actually, I do have an example of a castle. Gillette Castle in Connecticut. I mean, if it's a full big castle by sort of the European definition of it was like a working city that, people could run in the walls and throw up the drawbridge. I think castle does not count. I would say moat equals not a historic house. Different thing.
So if there's a moat, it is no longer a house. It's gone on to be a castle-like structure or something that is more.
Yeah, if there are turrets, I would say turrets are allowable, but moat, drawbridge, princess with hair being let down from a tower, these things not historic home.
Okay, I think I'm also in line with that definition.
Do you have any other add-ons that you would like to stricture? What makes something a historic home?
Well, I think that if it's a home, like commerce didn't happen there. So it can't be, it can't be like a home, like something that primarily functioned as an office.
So will our current apartments eventually count as historic homes, even though we're making so much money from this podcast? I mean, I feel like this is my home, but it's also, what's buying the home.
Yeah, no, the podcast makes it more of you live in a recording studio.
That's why this sounds so great.
It's true.
All right. Well, I think for me, I love going to historic houses for a couple of reasons. The first is I like to feel like I understand the historic figure a little bit better when I'm in that place. So, just seeing where they slept, see that like where they showered, where they had their coffee, it gives so much more than these like magisterial biographies,
Yeah, no, I mean, you actually they feel like people when you're in their home.
Yeah, and the homes usually have these guides who are such like nerdy experts that they are just obsessive about the personality of the person that lived there. I really like national park historic houses because the National Park Service, they'll still dress like a full ranger. Like they'll have the hat and like sometimes they even have like the waterproof stuff, and you're like, all you do is walk in these four rooms. I'm not sure you need all the gear.
Yeah, no, I that's something that always strikes me as funny, especially when you're in like New York City and you go to like Teddy Roosevelt's boyhood home.
Yeah.
And they're dressed like they're ready for safari.
They've got the hiking boots, a walking stick. Oh, this staircase goes several stories. Speaking of that house, that is not his real birthplace. That is just on the same block that his birthplace was, but it's several houses over, recreated top to bottom. For me, a Theodore Roosevelt nut, or a Ted head, as we like to call ourselves, I do not think that is an extraordinary historic house. You will not see that on my list of favorite houses.
And there is no moat, though, so it could qualify.
That's a good point. All right, I'll reconsider. But that one is a great example of probably the last reason that I like historic houses, which is I don't find that they're usually overwhelmingly packed with people. And if you're in a
It depends who how famous the person is.
Have you been to a I get okay, fair.
Yes.
So like Monticello.
One I'm going to talk about today is, you have to wait in line in every aspect of the house.
I can't wait to hear what that special house is.
Yeah.
But what I mean is you can find very famous historic houses in places that you don't expect. So if you end up your flight got canceled and you're stuck in a place for 2 days, if you're on a work trip and you have a free afternoon, you can often find some historic house in the area reachable that can make it into an interesting vacation.
So when I once had a car breakdown in Kingman, Arizona, and I stayed overnight at one of those little inns by the road, by the highway, and I said, "What's the best thing to see in Kingman?" And the woman said to me, "I swear to you, Timothy McVeigh grew up here."
I think that's they're considering that for National Park Historic Reservation.
Yeah, I did not go to Timothy McVeigh's house.
You didn't?
I did not. I don't think it's actually available to tour.
But if you had longer, it would have been a great place to stop by.
Yeah. It mostly just felt like a very weird thing to tell someone.
Yeah, I mean, I grew up. The field trips that we often took from my school were. I grew up right outside New Haven, Connecticut. They were in Hartford, Connecticut. 2 historic houses there: Mark Twain and Harriet Beecher Stowe. And I mean, who would think Mark Twain, who like kind of made his name writing about the South, his most historic books in Missouri, but his house that's super well preserved that he built, designed, that's in Hartford, Connecticut, a pretty boring town.
Isn't the circus guy also
P.T. Barnum?
P.T. Barnum? Is
Yeah,
that
P.T. Barnum. He definitely has a museum, but I don't know if his house is preserved. It's probably just a tent, just a big top tent with elephant cages.
Yeah.
And this is where he tortured the animals. So anyway, I think that it's always worth looking whether a historical house is close by, and they can lead to a lot of great surprises. So I think that right now I have 3 that I've chosen as my favorite. Ryan, did you come with 3 or more, or what do you have?
I have 3. I have exactly 3.
All right. So we should go through our 3, but first I'm going to say my judgment criteria of my 3 favorite historic houses are that I like the test of if I were dropped blindfolded into a house, you lifted the blindfold up off my eyes, and I looked around, could I guess what historical figure lived in that house?
Right.
I think if you can do that, that's a great historic house.
Yeah, I know. I agree. And a great historic person who obviously has a tremendous amount of character and is interesting. And if I can't imagine that, say, John Adams, if you dropped into his house, would have anything at all that would be very John Adams.
No, just pictures of George Washington with like knives through it. I've actually been to his house. We'll talk about that on another episode. That one didn't make my list, actually, but it is a great one. All right. How about why don't we do alternating? I'll go first, then we'll go right on to you.
Okay.
All right. So my first one's going to sound very familiar to you. I hope it's not on your list because we actually went to this together. Bit of a day trip out of New York City. This is when we went to Theodore Roosevelt's house in Sagamore Hill.
Yes.
Which is Oyster Bay, Long Island. Now, you referenced the birthplace. That's in New York City. But the house that's really his, that he would escape to when he was president, that's out on Long Island.
And I think that definitely fits your historic home value of historic homes. Right?
Absolutely. That's why it's number 1.
Yeah.
Because when I remember going in there and first of all, there's just so many iconic things all around. And you've got his Rough Rider's hat. You've got like a stag's head with a sword. And you've got the giant elephant tusks. It's a lot of taxidermy.
Yeah, it could only be Theodore Roosevelt's house or Elmer Fudd's. There's really no one else.
Bowie. Talk softly and carry a big stick. Is that good, Elmer Fudd?
That's
not bad. It's not bad.
This is why we have editing, folks.
Leave it in. I think that that's it goes along with my sort of interest in presidents, but I thought that there were so many little pieces there that showed you his eccentricities. The one that I really remember was that he had, like, I think it was a trash can that was made out of a hollowed out elephant's foot. That's like,
Wow.
so, I mean, you can find that in Timothy McVeigh's.
That would get you in trouble today, I think. If
Yeah,
you know.
I think so. But
Yeah.
it just, you immediately felt who this guy was. And you also felt like he had just left the room.
Well, I loved that house. That would have been on my list.
I mean, I
had you
think-
not stolen that from me.
The thing that's sad to consider is that current presidents, their houses will be taken over at some point, which means Mar-a-Lago eventually is going to be one of these.
Oh, but Mar-a-Lago is going to pass your test, right? If you get dropped in the middle of Mar-a-Lago and you just see a gold toilet, whose house could it be besides former President Donald Trump?
Scrooge McDuck. Okay,
Yes.
quick, do a Scrooge McDuck like I did Elmer Fudd.
I refuse.
Yeah, I don't know. I think did he have a Scottish accent?
It's been too long since I've heard Scrooge McDuck. I always did want to swim in a big thing of money, though. That looked like really entertaining.
I mean, first I'd like to get the money, and then eventually I'll move on to swimming in it. What's interesting about Mar-a-Lago, I mean, it's depressing that that's someday going to be in the ranks of Sagamore Hill, but it's actually already a National Historic Landmark because it was a mansion built out of the Post cereal fortune.
Right. Okay.
So
it's already a historic home that is now
Yes.
even more historic.
So hopefully once he's gone, they'll just fill it back up with Post cereals and we can just wipe this history from all of our thinking.
Let me transition to a president that I think is also a Republican, but one of the good ones.
Okay. I'm looking forward to this.
Abraham Lincoln's house
Oh, absolutely.
in Springfield.
Nobody can say he's a bad Republican.
Yeah, no, Abraham Lincoln's house in Springfield. It's really incredible. I was in Springfield for work, and I had the opportunity to go down and see Lincoln's house over lunch. And not only have they restored the house that Lincoln lived in prior to moving to D.C., they've restored several blocks around the house. So it actually is like you're stepping back into a Springfield that Lincoln would have seen. Like, you look out of the window, that's a house, kind of house he would have seen.
Mhm.
You walk around the grounds, it looks very much, no cars. It's very, very much the way that Lincoln would have experienced it.
Are people in costumes?
No, people are not in
Okay,
costumes.
good.
The ranger was wearing, she was ready to go in case she had to hike
Yeah.
a mountain or something. Here in the middle of downtown Springfield, Illinois.
She had her spikes on the boots. Yeah.
But
Case
it's a
a glacier came into
beautiful
view.
renovation, and it wasn't too crowded. And because the house was not the only house you could tour, you were able to actually spend some time in the Lincoln house, and then plenty of time walking around the grounds and the neighbors' houses.
How are the
too.
doorways? Are they tall? Are they like notably tall because they were built for him?
I don't know that they're notably tall. Back then, everything was like smaller. I remember.
Except for him.
Yeah. I remember we went to Paul Revere's house. You have to like crawl through it just to get to it. Yeah.
Paul Revere's house. That'll be on the worst historic houses list. Oh man, was that brutal? We went to that together too. I remember that does not pass my sniff test. Paul
No.
Revere's house. You walk in, you have no idea. There are lanterns everywhere.
Yeah.
There's not one. There's not two. There's hundreds of lanterns.
Yeah. You don't know a whole lot about Paul Revere's personality outside of that horse ride. So
Silver. He was a silversmith.
silversmith, yeah.
Yeah,
So
and
was
I don't-
everybody back then.
And I'm pretty sure the house was wooden.
the house was most
Yeah.
definitely not silver. It was,
What did they have a top hat? Did they have a stovepipe hat?
I think they did have a stovepipe hat. The thing that I remember the most outside of the grounds was of course like seeing the bed, which looked a little short. Like I would not have been comfortable in it. And just in general, it's it's always a little bit claustrophobic to be in those houses that were built back then because people were smaller, and Abe was not, so he must have been as uncomfortable as I was.
Did they have like this is where Mary Todd would go in this closet and rant and rave and scream and
That was every closet. Mary Todd did not get a whole lot of shout outs in the Lincoln house, although she would have been there
Really?
the whole time. Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
They just I don't think that's right.
They don't spend a lot of time on her. I mean, people are there, more for Lincoln, I think.
I'd like yeah. I guess there's not too many Todd heads Mary Todd heads.
That's a really specific thing to be. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
I think it's a Toddophile, actually.
All right. So my second house, I'm going to take us a step back from the presidents because my third one's also going to be a president. And I'll give you a hint. See if you can guess it. Ready?
Okay.
All right. As the skies are blue. No?
I mean, I don't even want. I don't want to try. So.
Well, I mean, all the listeners are shaking their head. They know exactly who it is. It is Louis Armstrong.
Louis Armstrong.
Louis Armstrong. He's in the house is in Queens, New York. Pretty far out there. Had to take a subway. A lot of stops to get there. It's at 107th Street. Now, remember, the house is important to me for two reasons. The first is that it's a great house, and I'll tell you why in a second. The second is because I remember I took a day off work because I was going to lose the vacation day by the end of the year if I didn't use it. So I decided I wanted to do just a local day trip. This is when I lived in New York. And so I was looking for a place to go. I was looking for a historic home and came upon Louis Armstrong. And I said to my girlfriend at the time, hey, do you any interest in taking a day off and go to Queens in the middle of winter and we can go see a 2-story ranch house that Louis Armstrong lived in his whole life? And she said yes. And I recounted that to my mother, and she said, God, Kieran, if you have found a girl who thinks that is as interesting as you do, you should really marry her. And that's what I did. So that was Catherine.
That is great advice, actually.
Yeah, absolutely. What I like about the house a lot is because they were they made a great curatorial choice, which is because music and audio was obviously the center of Louis Armstrong's being. Every room in the house, which is not that big of a house, maybe 8 rooms, it has a doorbell when you walk inside the doorway. And you press it, and you get to hear music and trumpet playing and audio that Satchmo, as he was called, Satchmo. Any idea where that came from?
I have no idea.
Yeah, me neither. He obsessively recorded even everyday conversations in the house, and so you can hear him actually recounting areas of the house. And it passes that test of infusing the person into the place. So it's sort of like no other. And I think that use of audio, it goes beyond what just an audio guide could do and makes it very interactive as you're going through.
And is it crowded? Like a lot of people there?
We were the only two there that day. I imagine that this is one of the most off the beaten path things you could do visiting New York. But well worth it, especially if you are a music fan. And of course, they have one of his trumpets there. They have some of his music there. I mean, if you are a Louis Armstrong nerd, then you have to go.
I'm a Queens nerd, so I'm kind of curious to go just to see a house in Queens at that time period. And
that's because I remember you're such a big fan of that show, King of Queens, right?
Huge fan of that show, King of Queens. No, I'm not, folks. Don't listen to him,
folks. Stop it with the folks. All right, Ryan, do you have a number 2?
I do. So I have to move away from presidents because my third house is also a president.
Oh, wow.
Frederick Church's house in Hudson, New York. And
I don't know who that is.
You don't know who Frederick Church is?
No, I don't.
Well, let me tell you
that
he was an American landscape painter born in Hartford, Connecticut.
Theme. God, now I'm embarrassed.
Yeah, a theme that is reoccurring in this episode. And he was a very big deal in what is called the Hudson River School of American Landscape Painters, meaning he painted the Hudson River an awful lot.
Do you want to read the whole Wikipedia article to us?
No, I don't. I think I should stop. I should stop there.
All right.
But the house.
So hold on. He was a painter, or he was a landscape architect?
He was a painter.
Okay.
But this house, Oleana State Historic Site, that is now run by the state, is incredibly beautiful. It's built on the top of a hill, and it overlooks the Hudson River. It overlooks sort of all these sort of green hills and mountains of the Hudson River Valley. And you can see sort of Hudson, New York from the house. So it sits on the top of this really big, national park that's got a ton of people walk around. People take their spend a day there. They picnic. It's like a sort of family community place.
So they bring the kind of outdoors aspect of it it's part of the house experience.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. People walk the grounds after they've seen the house, and the house itself sort of has a Turkish vibe. There's a lot of there's a lot of tile work and these sort of big rooms that are sort of square, and people would entertain.
Everything's sort of covered in a layer of spice.
Exactly. So it's a beautiful house, and it's definitely one of the more interesting things that you can do around sort of the Hudson, New York area. And he would entertain a lot because apparently, even though you and I had never heard of him, in his day he was a very, very famous man, and folks like Mark Twain actually came and stayed with him in this house, and he would obviously entertain, and he would have his celebrity friends up. Not that many celebrities in the 1870s in the United States.
Is
But
it a mansion? Would you like? Is it huge?
it's definitely a mansion. Yeah.
Okay.
But it's like a very unique style.
So a painter's salary went a long way back then.
Like most people who engage in the arts then, and perhaps even now, I believe that Mr. Church came from a pretty wealthy background.
Okay.
I don't know that his Hudson River paintings paid for this whole entire
Okay,
mansion.
so you think the mansion came from Daddy Church?
I would imagine Daddy Church. Maybe he married well. That's always a possibility.
You gotta marry well.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
absolutely. So that's the church house, and less interesting for church, more interesting for just how beautiful the grounds are, and it's about a 2-hour train ride from New York.
Yeah, I gotta say, if you dropped me into that house, I would not be able to say, "Oh, this is definitely Frederick Edwin Church's house."
No, but if you had done that in 1880 when he was apparently very famous, you
Oh,
might
I'd
have been
probably
like,
puke.
"Oh my
I was
gosh,
so excited.
all
Can you
these
believe
churches."
I'm in Frederick Edwin Church's house? All right, my last of my three is LBJ's Ranch Ranch in Stonewall, Texas.
I'm so jealous.
Have you haven't been to this
I've
one?
never been. I've been to the Presidential Library in Austin, but never to the ranch.
Yeah, so it's like an hour outside of Austin. I've gone to Austin a few times because my brother-in-law lives there, and we've kind of exhausted all the typical stuff you do in Austin, the Capitol
Right.
and the LBJ Presidential Library, which I love. And so we rented a car. We drove out. It was called the Western White House because LBJ used to go out there while he was president, and he would bring guests from all around the world, and the charm that he's famous for often came out, especially in this house. And what's cool about it is that Lady Bird lived in it right up until she died. So it continued to change all the way to 2007, which is when she died.
Yeah, she outlived him by many, many years.
Yeah, a ton of.
Yeah.
I mean, I couldn't believe when I saw 2007 was when she passed away. But now it is fully a museum and run by the national parks, and it's been restored to what it looked like in 1967. So they have found furniture and the paintings and the televisions and the telephones. Everything is as LBJ would have had it at his kind of at his peak power. A few things I remember like really clearly is that the kitchen is this kind of crazy bright yellow, blue, green, like Formica, really 1960s looking kitchen. And you are told by the ranger that leads you through, this is where early on when he was being courted as vice president, where they were working together, that the Kennedys actually sat in this kitchen, sat in this room. And so you do get this sense of kind of great historical forces in the house. And one detail that just seemed so LBJ to me was somebody had given him a pillow that had a pride of place in the house that said, "This is my ranch, and I do as I damn please." And of course, available for purchase in the gift shop.
I'm sure. I wonder if he was the first president to have a ranch. I mean, obviously, George Bush had Bush Jr. had a ranch, and
Yeah.
we went to his ranch.
I mean, ranch, not
It would have to be a Western president, right?
That's
to have
what.
a
Yeah,
ranch.
that's what I'm trying to think of. Yeah, I think
John Kennedy didn't have a ranch.
No, he
Yeah.
didn't.
Those shoes did not want to step in the dirt.
Yeah,
I
how
don't
dare
imagine.
you?
Yeah,
The
yeah.
brush clears itself in Massachusetts. How about what president should have had a ranch?
Andrew Jackson, probably, you know.
Oh, Andrew Jackson. Absolutely. I'm actually reading a book about Andrew Jackson right now. He was not a good guy.
Not a good guy.
Whoa, but thin, very thin,
Well,
much
yeah.
like Lincoln.
Well, you know, he exercised a lot. He was
Actually,
running around, fought a lot
I'll
of
tell
wars.
you maybe my favorite fact about him that I've learned from this
Uh-oh.
book, which is when he apparently always suffered from great stomach troubles.
Like Napoleon.
I didn't know that.
You know, that's why Napoleon was always holding his stomach in all the pictures you see.
Oh, wow, that's
Yeah,
why.
Exactly.
Wow. Okay. Well, anyway, so Andrew Jack, how are these like military people with stomach problems? God, I can
Who
like
knows?
hardly handle stomach problems when I'm 2 feet from my home. Andrew Jackson would, when he was leading the military as a general, he would have people go ahead and they would cut down a sapling and they would bend it over so that it touched the ground. And the only way that he could experience relief from his stomach troubles was that he would drape himself over the tree
Oh my
and just
God.
lay there for a few minutes. It was like battlefield yoga. And then he would, finally come erect again. And he would say, all right, onward, cut me another tree, in 5 hours. And then they would go through the charade again. But he had to lean doubled over against trees.
It's funny. I'm reading Burr, the book by Gore Vidal right now.
Oh, yeah.
About
Yeah.
Aaron Burr, and apparently he had tremendous stomach troubles when he was in the Revolutionary War.
This is a weird thing, and of course now we have Justice Brett Kavanaugh's
Yeah.
famously weak stomach.
He can't eat spicy foods.
So maybe famous people all have weak stomachs,
There's some
which
about
makes
fame.
sense because so many are in shape.
Yeah, and the stress causes you.
You know who didn't have a weak stomach?
Who?
Taft. Oh boy, oh
Oh,
boy.
no.
No, that man had a stomach we could all get in.
I bet LBJ had a pretty strong stomach too.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Well, he famously used to continue to carry on meetings even while he was, as he called it, on the shitter.
We have gotten a little bit off topic here, I think.
Well, I don't know. The bathrooms we got to see the bathrooms in the Western White House
Yeah.
too. But I like to keep it a little less blue. So maybe we can go to your last and final.
My last is something that every American should go see, and that is Mount Vernon, George Washington's estate.
Good.
What?
I disagree, but go ahead.
I disagree with your disagreement.
Great.
A lot of things that are interesting about George Washington. Obviously, he was our first president, but he was also at the time one of the largest landowners in the United States.
I'm sorry. Did you say land or slave? I couldn't quite. Couldn't quite hear in my earphones. Did you say land or slave?
I said land.
Oh,
I said land.
sorry.
Yeah.
Okay.
He also was they talk about this at the house. They're
But
very open.
not enough. In
No.
my opinion, not enough. This is one of my two criticisms.
Not like Monticello, where it's you walk in and it's pretty much that is like everywhere and prevalent. Yeah.
Yeah, and you can take specialized tours. You get an admission for the day, and then you can select a tour that takes you through slavery. You can do a specific Sally Hemings tour.
Right.
And I think they really confront that history very honestly at Monticello.
Well, at Mount Vernon, you take the historical denialism tour.
Yeah.
You don't have to
That's right.
deal with the fact that George Washington owned a lot of people.
Yeah, father of our country and nothing else.
Yeah, nothing else. But the estate is really beautiful. It's on this river, which is allows you to really understand why he settled there.
It is a beautiful view.
And the house is impeccably restored, but it is so crowded that
Yeah.
you walking through the estate, especially the main part of the tour, like when you get to go see his deathbed and all these things. You are like so close. It is like being in a line at Disneyland or something. You are so close to the person next to you, and everyone is like trying to be silent. Although there be a few people kind of clearly don't understand what's going on and like are talking too loud while you're in Washington's death room. But it is something to see, and it was probably the first presidential house I ever went to because I grew up in Maryland, and that would have been like a field trip that we took as kids.
Yeah, I think the thing that bothered me the most was that conveyor belt feeling,
Right.
Where I just felt like it felt like Temple Grandin had like designed this tour experience where we were farm animals just being led to the slaughter, and I could tell from your huge laughter, Ryan, that you totally got me.
Oh, yeah, I totally got your reference. It's great. I'll Google that later. Well, so is there anything?
I do. It is that conveyor belt feeling that I didn't really
Right.
care for. I also remember you don't travel through with a particular guide. There's a guide posted in each room,
Yes.
and that's another thing I didn't like, where you risk having people repeat each other because you're not with the same guide. And also, I like to kiss up to the guide so
Sure,
that I can
same.
ask lots of annoying questions.
Yeah, at the Lincoln House, I was probably the most annoying person the guide had seen all day. I had
Yeah.
so many opinions and thoughts.
Yeah.
But I mean, at the Washington House, they have to get like 100,000 people through there every 24 hours, so there's just not a lot of time. Before we go for our final stop, I have a question for you. What famous American alive today has a house that you would most like to visit?
Ooh, that's tough. Am I visiting it after they're dead?
Oh yeah, I don't think you're just like showing up, in the middle of dinner.
Hiya.
Hiya.
Okay, so they have to be. And am I going in the future, or somebody who's dead right now, like somebody who's recently dead?
No. This would be there's gonna be two questions. My next question will be where have you not been you want to go. This is what famous American who is living. So
Okay.
like, say you wanted to go to Ariana Grande's house.
Okay,
You know,
sure.
that would be an example.
Got to see Pete Davidson just hanging around there because he's hardly got a day job. I think that okay, here are two people that just come to mind because we were talking about artists. I'm going to keep it away from
Yeah.
presidents here. I think I have two people who I can think just their houses must really be a hoot. Ready?
Ready.
And I feel sure they would pass my test.
Sure.
If you dropped me in blindfolded, I could tell you who
Okay,
it was.
I'm ready.
One, Jimmy Buffett. That guy's got to have some crazy bungalow. You'd probably in the Keys. There's probably parrots everywhere.
Is he still living?
Yeah, he's still living.
okay,
Absolutely.
okay. No.
He's got the tropical vibe. Don't try
That's
to bring
true.
him down.
He's very laid back. He's a very laid back guy.
Very laid back. And
I
feel like
apologize to any parrot heads that listen to the show.
You're talking to one right now, but I don't listen to the show. And I bet every guest could get some rum and maybe lay on a hammock for a while. I think it would be almost like a spa to visit his house. And the second is Lady Gaga's house. I feel sure that Lady Gaga's house, you could set it up with all the crazy costumes. Maybe you could start a bad romance there. I don't know. I'm just spitballing. I think that it could be full of crazy and interesting and fun Lady Gaga spectacular.
Or it's like really disappointing and just a totally normal house.
Yeah. Oh, you mean totally disappointing, like everything she ever did with Tony Bennett?
Ooh.
There's a
Wow.
hot take. Hot takes.
Whoa.
Ooh, this microphone's hot.
Ooh.
Hot. Okay,
well,
how about you?
okay,
if you
for
had to
me-
pick, since I did two, you should just do one.
I'm gonna say the Bill Gates house because I've been reading about Bill Gates' house since the 90s.
Mm-hmm.
It used to be that you would wear like a pin that would alert the house around like, to where you. This was like a big deal in the 90s.
Yeah, I remember this.
Nowadays, it's just called a smart home. You
Yeah.
know, but
You
but
could tell the house what the temperature was from the car.
Yeah, it's really incredible. So yeah, I've always heard really beautiful things about it. It's in Seattle. He used a lot of wood from this old construction site, so it's like all repurposed. It's supposed to be an incredible house.
But then
It's got a
weren't
lot
the
of-
walls like giant screens, and you could say, "I love Monet," and then the
Yeah.
pin would broadcast to the wall. Put Monet's up on the wall.
Exactly. That is what he said in his 1997 book, The Road Ahead with Bill Gates.
Oh, brother.
He said they're high definition screens. So back then they were probably like 600.
Yeah, I'm sure it looked
600
terrible. Anyone
Yeah.
who's currently using Microsoft Outlook tools
Yeah.
understands that this probably wasn't the sharpest image.
All right, so Bill Gates' house for me. Now, of houses that I want to go to of folks who have passed away, the number one, far and away for me, is Johnny Cash's home. I have seen so many friends go on Instagram.
Hey, you know what I bet are beautiful on Bill Gates' house?
What?
The windows.
Oh my gosh!
Sorry. Go ahead.
No, they take forever to load. You can't look out of them.
And they're impossible to
Yeah.
open, but
You
they
just
also
see a
don't totally
spinning
close.
hourglass everywhere you go. Just spinning hourglass. Clippy pops up. You know, you want some
looks like
coffee?
looks like you're trying to open a window.
That would actually be cool.
Yeah, Clippy's house I would like to go
Yeah.
to.
Do you have any good Johnny Cash jokes, or you're gonna let him slide because he's a great American?
No, I think he's a great American. Absolutely, I'd like to visit his. Okay, sorry, I interrupted you to get to Clippy. Johnny Cash's house. Why Johnny Cash?
So I love Johnny Cash. As I've mentioned on the podcast before, when I grew up, one of my first trips was to Nashville. I was a country fan.
You love country.
I used to love country. Now I listen to some country.
Well, I think the town you grew up in Maryland was probably that. What's it like 2 feet below the Mason-Dixon line, so you
Yeah.
can actually claim.
I'm a Southerner, you know. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah, living in Bushwick, New York, where
Living in
all
Bu-
the Southerners live.
But Johnny, you know, I grew up listening to Johnny Cash. I saw Johnny Cash perform at the Grand Ole Opry when I was young, and I'm just an incredible fan of his whole body of work, and I would love to see his home.
I
And
think that they could do something similar as the Louis Armstrong House, of bringing in interviews, clips, music, and instruments all around the house so that you can get that feel.
I would be very sad if there wasn't a lot of music everywhere inside the house. It should really feel alive.
They should make you wear like a prison uniform when you go through.
Yeah.
I have a lot of ideas for curatorial things that they should do around.
Right.
Yeah. And
well, we should do a whole episode on the best jails we've ever visited. You know, I have a whole list of those.
Voluntarily or involuntarily?
I mean, you know, yeah.
I don't think we can tell your crimes this early, Ryan. Why don't we get to the last stop?
The last stop.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is the last stop on this train. Everyone, please leave the train.
All right. Well, the last stop, again, it's a moment at the end of the show where Ryan and I like to each talk about something we've seen or read or listened to, something that's keeping the passion for travel alive in our lives. You know, what's feeding our wanderlust this week? Ryan, do you have one?
Well, so this weekend I'm going to visit my good friend Aaron in Tampa, Florida. So, you know, immediately it's like, wow, there's going to be a lot of, you know, stuff to see because it is Tampa, Florida,
Sure.
you know, historic place.
Absolutely. Oh my goodness.
So, you know, I'm skipping the Busch Gardens because that's not really my kind of thing. But I am going to go
because you hate family fun.
I do hate family fun. We're going to go to this thing called the Lettuce Lake Regional Park, which is this massive park that has all these like really fun wooden structures all over the place. You can climb up and see all
Lettuce,
sorts of,
like the vegetable?
Yeah, it's called Lettuce Lake.
Lettuce Lake.
And it is supposed to be one of the more kind of like interesting public spaces in Tampa. You know, which...
Oh, there's a future episode.
Yeah, things to do in Tampa. I'm also going to try to check out the Henry B. Plant Museum.
What's that?
And this is it's an old Tampa Bay hotel that's been turned into a museum that focuses on the Spanish-American War.
Huh. That sounds pretty interesting.
Yeah, that could be interesting, right? So I'm looking forward to those things, and I can let folks know next week what it was like.
All right, my last stop, Ryan, is as you know, got a new day job, and I had the opportunity to do the decor of my office. And in the true spirit of out of office, I really wanted something to remind me of travel and the fact that you're working to support your vacation. And so I looked at a company. It's a company, I have a couple other posters that they make, but it's called Ranger Doug Enterprises. Have you ever heard of that?
I have not, no.
So you've probably seen the work before, which is...
I know like Ranger Rick. What do I know Ranger Rick from?
Ranger Rick is like one of the best children's outdoor magazines in existence. You probably know it because there's always about 30 years of Ranger Ricks on every dentist's office. Exactly.
Yeah, next to highlights.
Yeah, Ranger Rick, highlights, and Dental Today.
Yeah.
And so I sent away to Ranger Doug's Enterprise, and we'll put that link in the show notes. What they do is they make beautiful national park posters, and the story is really interesting. Ranger Doug was a real national parks ranger, and he discovered that in the 1930s, with the Works Progress Administration and through the Depression, the federal government trying to keep artists working, there were commissions for tourism posters made for each of the national parks. And it wasn't all the national parks at the time, but it was something. They think that there were 17, I think. And he came upon one of these that had been totally lost to time, literally in a shed area. And it was it was kind of in line to be burned at the park. And he saved it and put a call out to other rangers all across the park system. Look in every nook and cranny of every building you have and see if you can discover these posters. And so he's gotten a bunch of them. I think there are 13 originals, and then they've had modern artists mimic the style through today. And they're beautiful, super colorful. They look very much of their time, so they're evocative of this kind of 1930s style. and they recreate what they think these posters actually looked and how they were colored. And so I got 24 of postcard size ones, and I just papered the whole back of my desk with that. So, when I have just a little too much of Microsoft Word, too much of that spinny, your computer's broken bulb, I just look up and remind myself, that's where you're going next.
Can you get a picture of that we can put it in the show notes?
Oh, absolutely. And if you want a lot more of that content, you just got to follow me on the Instagram.
Well, yes, we both are total Insta folks. We Insta.
Insta folks, as we call ourselves. I am at Kiernan P. Schmidt.
And I'm at Ryan New York. We'll put that in the show notes, and I think that we'll see our Instagram following explode.
Absolutely. And I hope that we see sales to Ranger Doug Enterprises explode, because I think they do awesome, very cool work preserving great history at the national parks.
Well, that sounds awesome. So what are we talking about next week?
So next week, we're doing an episode called Money Matters. And this is about how you plan ahead for using currency in a foreign country. And that, I think if you're traveling through Western Europe, that can seem really easy because there's ATMs and credit cards still work. But if you're going a little more off the beaten path, you need to put quite a bit more thought into how you're going to use cash.
All right. So I look forward to chatting with you about that. I know we each have stories about being without cash, not having enough cash.
I'm without cash right now. All right.
Well,
until
next
then,
week.
Absolutely.
I'm Ryan Davis.
And I'm Kiernan Schmidt.
And we're out of office.
A travel podcast.